So the past 8 years, I attended the Consumer Electronics Show. This is the largest tech conference, maybe the largest conference overall in the world, where over 100,000 people attend every year, at least for the last few years. And at least I would say another 25 to maybe 50,000 travel to Vegas during that time, during the show. So much is going on: restaurants, bars, special events, concerts, tons of after parties. Well, the CES just announced this week that its 2021 show, which they hold in early January every year, and that's 6 months away, is now going to be all digital. Basically, it's not open, which is going to be horrible. Because if you guys know, if you follow me, I cover that conference extensively. I look forward to it every year. You see my live videos from the conference floor, sampling these technologies, making an idiot out of myself just to show you some of those, new technologies, new stuff that's out there, like jumping into an 8-foot deep tank of water in the middle of the conference floor in a wetsuit to sample an underwater scooter. And look, I lost some weight over the past year, probably in the best shape of my life. But me in a wetsuit, not something easy to look at. I mean, I look like a giant black pear floating around the water, but that thing was awesome. I actually bought it. I mean, my daughters use it. My pool's fantastic. But this is a massive, massive blow to Vegas. I mean, every room in every hotel is booked, and they're booked at least 3-4 months ahead of the conference. I know if I book later than that, it's very difficult to get a room. Restaurants. You won't find a restaurant that's not packed. You won't even get into these unless you have reservations. The casinos are packed. Nightlife. Everyone's going out for drinks. Streets are packed. And that boardwalk is packed. And Vegas loves it. They run up all the fees, the hotel fees, rent-a-car fees. I mean, you get charged just shaking people's hands. And nobody complains because it's Vegas. And hey, you're going to something that's really cool. It's a fun conference. It's awesome. Sin City. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. A lot of people go out there, they go crazy. They spend a ton of money. And it sucks because it's all digital this year. And for me, it's the worst because I have this exclusive access given that this podcast, and thanks to you, the amount of people that download it, qualifies me for getting a media badge. And when these companies see media badge, they open up everything to you. Everything. You're talking to the top, you'll see the interviews. I mean, you guys like top leaders in Amazon in charge of their auto division. And some of these interviews were fantastic. They'll close down their floors to the public for 15 minutes to let me do a live video explaining these products and interview these people on the floor. And it's a lot of fun. And the most important thing is I always come back with awesome under-the-radar ideas that we've done fantastic on in technology since I've been going to these conferences, getting into trends like cloud before anybody knew. You look at 3D printing as it run up and telling people to get off wearables, how it wasn't going to be a big deal. And then now you're seeing wearables come back a lot more. And that trend got ahead of itself. And all these trends, if you're looking at big data analytics, when Cisco made these speeches, how many connectivity and what was it, 7 or 8 billion devices are going to be connected, or I think it was actually 10 billion devices are going to be connected. I'm looking going, okay, well, there's over 7 billion people. And he was like, no, we're not talking about just one device. Everything's going to be connected. This is 2012. He made that speech. But getting into these trends, talking to the right people, I mean, that's something that I love doing. We get tons of views, everything, just showing everyone that experience. And everyone's just saying, man, I got to go. You definitely have to go to that conference. So it really sucks this year. It's basically canceled. They're going to have it on digital. I mean, that conference is the worst to be digital because you're not just going to like a mining conference and people going up there, presentations. And yes, it's important with the interaction and stuff like that. People love going there because you sample all these technologies across all sectors, no matter who you are, what age group. But it's a lot of fun. But you know what? Forget that for a minute. Because there's a much bigger picture that's far more important. The coronavirus risk, and the key word there is risk. The risk is not going away. I thought it would by now. Very surprised, New York closed the economy. Good luck opening that back up. Because when you do, you're going to see what Florida saw, what everybody else, Texas saw. You're going to see cases explode, but you're going to notice something really cool, that your death rates are going to be down because we understand that anyone in the 60s, pretty much fine if they get this, if you look at statistics. But now, in Major League Baseball just suspended a few games after more than half the Marlins team contracted the virus. We're going to see the same thing happen across all these professional sports. NFL, NBA is going to open pretty soon in the bubble. NFL. There's going to be more athletes that get it. I mean, they're in close contact with each other. No matter what kind of bubble you create, it's going to happen. And you just need one person to get it. Everyone's going to get worried. And again, New York's still closed. California said, we're closing our economy again. Why is this a big deal? If we look back 2 months ago, the consensus from almost every economist, analyst, corporations was that, hey, we're going to have a second half recovery, meaning our economy will almost go back to normal by the end of this year. Get all of the Fed inflating everything. We're just throwing tons of money, trillions into this market, and we're going to have a great 2021. It's kind of funny because these same analysts first called for a second quarter recovery, right, which I called bullshit on. That wasn't going to happen. Then they said, well, it's more like a second half recovery. And then 2021, all the Fed spending, everything go back to, it's going to be a monster year. It's going to be a great year. That explains why stocks really started moving up. And people started buying a lot of these things that were cheap, along with our government, who spent over $6.5 trillion, 30% of GDP, to support our economy. So far, a lot more is coming. A lot more is coming. But the economy getting back to normal this year, if I had to put on a scale to, say, 1 to 100, and 1 being the worst, it's 0, 0, 0. Why is it 0? Because people are still scared to death of COVID. They don't want to send their kids to school. Athletes are scared to play sports. Economies are closing. In Washington states like Florida, Texas, Arizona, and you read the stories that have skyrocketed. They use the word skyrocket, cases skyrocket, record highs, out of control. These states are horrible. They don't know what they're doing. I'm going to tell you right now is the truth. And it's going to piss most of you off. Because so many of us, when we look at outlets or what we're looking at to get our information, and we're being conditioned to think a certain way by the media, by social media. So it's not anyone's fault. It's the way our brains react. And we love storytelling. It's ingrained. There's a reason why when you look at Spider-Man, whatever, over the past 12 years, the same Spider-Man has been made over and over again. It always generates $1 billion. We love to be entertained. We love to be entertained. And it's easy to do that with social media and show you things that are happening to a small percent of the population. But it's crazy out there. And this truth I'm going to share is meaningless for a second. I'm going to show you why it's important, but it's going to be meaningless in terms of how you think about COVID. But you've been listening to me for over 12 years on this podcast. And I was doing this for over 25 years, 12 years. I mean, try to name 10 people that have a podcast longer than 12 years. I mean, I don't even think I can. I think Andrew did it like half a year before me. Andrew Horowitz, very few people. But a lot of you have been listening to me, especially over the long term, over the last 5 years at least or longer. You listen to me because I don't bullshit you. That's just the way I grew up. I grew up in New York. You say what you feel, you say what you mean. And often that means I'm on the other side of the popular opinion, which I like to be because it usually means that I'm right. If you're saying something, everybody disagrees with you, it usually means you're right. That's just the way it is. It's funny. Especially the more angry people get at you. Pound your positions in stocks if that happens. Anyway, not being on the popular side usually amounts to a lot of interesting emails, which I should read to you sometime. Get interesting. It's all right. Keep them coming. FrankCurzioResearch.com. But my agenda over my 25-year plus career has always been the same. To help you become better investors, to help you create generational wealth so your kids, maybe their kids, are financially secure. You can send your kids to college. And in helping you, you're going to subscribe to my newsletters, which will lead to me hiring even more employees, more credible analysts, more great newsletters, and building our brand, made it just credible. where every investor has the same access to those on Wall Street. So my goal is leveling the playing field, which has never been level and it still isn't. But if you're following us, we're teaching you how to get in ahead of Wall Street, how to be a part of Wall Street when they're pouring into ideas, understanding how they think, understanding what is going on. It's built a very good reputation in an industry of financial newsletters that says, let's face it, it doesn't really have a credible background. If you talk to most people, a lot of people get burned. There's all like high sales pitches and you're going to make $1 million tomorrow, all this crazy stuff. It's tough. It's tough to say, hey, you know what? We have the track record. We're good. Listen to us. And when people come into our company and buy our newsletters, they see that. They stay and they buy others' newsletters. But that's the goal. That's been the mission, to bring this to everybody out there. So here's the truth. You don't need to be scared of the coronavirus. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit that's being driven by politics. Now, you're looking at one party that controls most of the media outlets. That's a fact. You're looking at Trump's numbers starting to sink when the coronavirus started to spread across the U.S. and states began to close their economies. Again, that's a fact. So if you're looking at that party that wants to win the election, which they could win without a lot of bullshit, but it's in their best interest to keep the economy closed. Have people protesting like crazy. It's amazing because you're worried that the coronavirus is going to spread and you got to close your economies. How many people out there are telling people not to protest? And what, it doesn't spread between protesters? Kind of interesting. But it's in their best interest to continue to scare the shit out of you. At least until they get that person of their party elected. From a political standpoint, the strategy is brilliant. It's working. It makes sense. From a credibility standpoint, not saying that the other side of the party is that much credible, but from a credibility standpoint, you're killing Americans and destroying our country with this agenda. And there's facts to support that. I have a lot of friends on both sides, with Democrats, Republicans, always going to have our differences, which is fine. But right now in America, and believe me, this is going to come back to financials, so pay attention. And I know some of you might have tuned me out already. Pay attention, it's important. Because right now in America, I always knew how important power is to anyone that gets it. I've seen people change when they get that power. And I've seen it often because I worked on Wall Street. Very successful people that I work for. You see it, they change, and that power is addicting. It's very important, and I get it. Okay? Again, see firsthand growing up in New York on Wall Street. I never thought in my life, in my career, that any American would choose power over life or over lives. So, I know I can see the emails coming in, frankcurzioresearch.com, but I want to elaborate, okay? Please listen. It's going to be worth it. Because if you're under 60 years old with no respiratory problems, there is less than a 0.3% risk of you dying from this disease, which puts it on par with the traditional flu, which we've been told, no way, it's worse than the flu, don't compare it to. If we take out that group, which we learned now that that's what COVID targets when it comes to fatalities, people over 60 and people that have respiratory problems, right? We know that now. You want some real examples? Take our athletes, right? I mentioned earlier, Major League Baseball. So the Marlins, was it 17, 18 of them got the coronavirus, suspending games, and they're saying, well, maybe they're going to have to cancel season. How many professional athletes do you know of that got affected with COVID? Okay, I would say easily over 1,000. I'm a sports geek, love sports, check websites daily, several times to see what's going on. Golf, basketball, football, hockey. I just grew up with sports. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Hard to watch ESPN, which is a site that I admire. I love it. So many great people on it because it's all political now, right? I mean, the reason why you watch sports, the reason why you listen to music is to get away from all the bullshit. And now that bullshit is impacting the things that we even love in our pastimes, right? Who cares? I'm still a big sports fan. So again, our athletes, I would say over 1,000. I mean, we hear the popular ones that get it. How many of these athletes died from COVID? I can't name one. I might be able to name some European soccer player. I can't name one. Anyone in the NBA die? Anyone in Major League Baseball die from COVID? That's playing? There might be a couple, but really, compared to how many people have gotten it, if you look in May, think about in May, guys, right? Wasn't that long ago, but in May, I didn't know anyone who had the virus. I'm sure some of you didn't know anyone who had the virus. Few people were getting tested. Today, everybody's getting tested. And I know or heard of neighbors, friends, acquaintances, I have to say easily over 100 people who have had the virus so far. I don't know any of them that died. Not one. In fact, how many people do you know who are under 60, no respiratory problems, who contracted the virus, who have died? I may be talking to this where you know one or two. And again, these are lives. I understand. I get it. People are dying. Few people are going to die. But I guarantee that more than 95% of you listening to this right now, you don't know a person under 60 with no respiratory problems that's died of COVID. Why? Because it almost never happens. And the data from no matter what side you're on, CDC, you're looking at European data, ABC News, 100% supports this. But nobody cares. Now, when it comes to our schools opening back up, this is interesting. The big fight's taking place, which again, it's in one party's best interest if this does not happen. According to almost every poll you will see. Forget about what you think of me. This is the polls. This is the polls talking. This is a fact. When we look at the percentage of kids who die from COVID, it's less than the flu. And you know what happens if kids do test for the virus? I know this personally because my 9-year-old daughter, who has Crohn's, needs a procedure done next week. Well, she got a COVID test 3 weeks ago. Kids had a slight fever, said, let's go. It's fine. They were fine. But now that she needs this procedure after seeing her doctor, we got to change her medicine. So they got to do a procedure, which sucks. She's 9 years old. But they said, hey, you have to take another COVID test. I took her yesterday to the doctor. Thank God this COVID test wasn't like the first one because these are pre-op. So I don't know if you know this, but you need to take one 6 days before any operation or if you're going under, right? Just because there's going to be a lot of doctors around, you need to. So it doesn't matter. And so they have a separate place for this, right? Because you don't want to go where people who think they have COVID, and a lot of people may have it and get tested there. They have a special place that you test because most of these people don't have it, but you need to be sure because doctors are going to be, all over you. So they said, well, no news is good news. I know she doesn't have it. So they were like, no news is good news. But if she does have it, this is the nurses, the doctors, just, stay home, make sure she's quarantined. So you don't need to go to the hospital unless you have breathing problems, which almost never, ever happens with kids. I mean, does it happen? Yes, there's very small examples. And God forbid, like if your kid did die from this, I mean, it's a tragedy. But we're looking at percentages, and there's no perfect solution to this. Like, we really want a perfect solution to this. If we go to war with someone, expect that we're not going to have any casualties, we're going to lose our freedom because we'll never go to war. You have to weigh the risk reward, just like you do in investing. And if you look, 99.8% of kids have mild symptoms and are perfectly fine, and it's less than 2 weeks later. That's why almost every leading doctor on both sides of the aisle say kids need to go back to school. It supports the facts. So you say, well, what about the teachers? And I get it, okay? But when it comes to kids and transmitting COVID, here's something interesting. Very few transmit the virus to adults. In fact, it almost never, ever happens. So when it comes to teachers who are worried about contracting COVID when we open schools back up, all right? That's a worry. And if you're over 60, you shouldn't be going back. If you have respiratory, you shouldn't be. But everybody else, all the teachers, here's something interesting. You know how many teachers have gotten infected from a child that has the coronavirus? Take a second. Any guesses? Zero. There's no recorded cases. You may say, well, Frank, they've been out of school for the last few months. Bullshit. It was the second week in March. We started closing schools through the rest of the month. And at that period, every single state was reporting cases on COVID, and it was spreading. So kids were in school with teachers still. Zero recorded cases. Zero. Yet that's a big thing. What about the teachers when they go back? We're at risk. Zero. Not only the kids, the symptoms are low, they don't really transmit the disease. Again, facts support this. And when you look at the data, it 100% supports the opening of schools. and keeping them closed, preventing kids from socializing, learning, building their character, learning how to interact with people, skills they can't really learn from their parents. It's a big part. The building blocks of growing, they're essential. You're robbing these kids of that experience, again, which is a necessity in terms of building you as a person, all because of a fucking political agenda. Now, when it comes to COVID, I haven't seen another analyst on Wall Street predict a major collapse in early February when stocks were at all-time highs. We're saying to get out of stocks. And hear anyone say that the U.S. will have more cases than any other country in mid-February, get something I said, criticized for. I got these right because I have amazing sources. It's not because I'm a genius. Okay, I have sources that have no agenda that email me all the time, just like me. I don't have an agenda. People go, "Oh, Frank, you have an agenda." And I don't have an agenda. I want the best for everybody. I want this country to open back up. I look at data all the time. For me, I'm willing to switch on a dime if I see the facts change in any stock I recommend or on my market prediction. Okay, that's the way it is. That's the way I am with everything. I don't care who wins this election. What I care about is how we're going to benefit. But I have those amazing sources, interviewing people in Europe, seeing how serious they took the lockdown. Cops in the street, masks everywhere, taking temperatures. Same in China. We didn't do any of that shit here. No way. It's just a matter of time. It was pretty simple. That was going to spread if you had the right data, but most people didn't. We're saying, the U.S., we're fine. New York saying, no, don't worry about it. I don't care whose fault it is. It's a fact. People who got the coronavirus in New York, they decided to put them into nursing homes. Really good idea, right? Turns out to be a horrible idea. It's okay. Nobody understood it, but it's everybody else's fault. Everyone's going to blame everybody else, right? Back and forth. Crazy. But that's why New York's death rates skyrocketed, or is no one even close to their death rates, even though they haven't been reporting death rates because they have their economy closed. But they're all going to follow Florida. They're going to follow Texas. These states actually, and Arizona, they're going to wind up closing their borders because it's going to be spreading. Look at Ohio. Some other states that open it, you're seeing it spread. You have to go through, call it a second wave, whatever it is. As you open these economies, it's going to spread. But we know more now, which is important. We know more now to help people. And having these sources is amazing. And why am I bringing this up? Because do you know how many doctors have reached out to me that are in the field dealing with COVID patients every day, have data that is absolutely essential that's going to help save lives? And the data that they shared with me is amazing. Again, no agenda. I don't know if the Democrat or Republican, they work with people. They work with COVID patients. And the data showed like how kids need to go back to school, how the virus targets 6 years old, right? Over. Knew that in early March. How the hospitals are really not at full capacity. Again, they have no agenda. They're telling me this. How ICUs are not crowded. We have enough ventilators. And by the way, if you're looking at ICUs, they need to be operating over 90%, or they're going to have to fire nurses. Most are in the 70% across the country, right? They've been lower. I took my daughter to the hospital yesterday. There was no one in the hospital. No one in the hospital in terms of spaces. And same hospital my mother was at for 4.5 months. I was going to visit her almost every single day, jam-packed. No one's getting anything done because of COVID. Nothing. Everything's been shut down. How the death rate as a percentage of affected has gone down considerably, these doctors share with me, since we have drugs now to treat patients with severe symptoms that lowers the risk of death by over 60%. But you know what's funny? You know what these doctors, every single one of them said? Please don't use my name if you're going to share the data on your podcast. Think about that for a minute. So these are doctors, great people on the front line, great information that could help save lives. But every one of them makes that I don't use their name. And I get it, because they're going to get scrutinized by their peers. The people of power have an agenda. Who knows what's going to happen? It's just you have no benefit of opening your mouth about something that's not the status quo, because people are going to hate you. What's the benefit? There is no benefit when you look at it. So doctors on the front line, they can't tell us the facts or what they're seeing. And how insane is that? I mean, again, you're looking at Florida, Arizona, Texas. Remember the stories over the past 2 weeks. These states are irresponsible. They're reckless. Media lashed out against him. We had some of the top doctors who, by the way, and these are stats even shared from my doctor friends, which are cool, that have emailed me. Again, no agenda at all here. If you're looking at most of the leading doctors out there, they're all over 65. I mean, they're in the target zone. Aren't you going to think about this virus differently compared to kids who are like, all right, you're forcing me to stay home. I know that if I get it, probably nothing's going to happen to me, and I'm going to go out. And they're criticizing them. You're going to have a bias, just like everybody does. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, depending on where you live, who do you know, who you talk to, what you listen to. But the doctors out there who are not in the field, right? They're getting updates. They're more concerned with going on TV all the time, throwing out pitches and stuff. That's fine. Good for you. Have fun. Enjoy the celebrity status. That's awesome. I'm talking about doctors on both sides, not just Fauci. On both sides. It's so funny because Democrats, Republicans, like every other couple of weeks, like they switch back and forth whether they like him or don't like him, depending on what agenda. If he's reporting something that he'd think, which again, he's trying to report things that he thinks, his track record has not been good. Nobody's track record has been that good. That's fine. What I fucking hate is how these doctors can't come out and say, look, we're going by science. This is what we learned. Here's why we're changing. No, nobody's allowed to be wrong ever or admit it, right? Ever on both sides, which is crazy. But if you're looking at these states and you're looking at the stories that were written, that reckless media just lashed out against them, destroying even though death rates were down considerably as a percentage of affected, hospitalization capacity is below 70%. Or you're looking at some of the data, I know in Florida is completely fabricated and needed to be revised. I mean, come on, there's an agenda there. Even today is a great story on CBC. It says California, Texas, Florida all reported record high averages in COVID deaths. What they don't say is that this death rate of infected that are dying is considerably lower when you're looking on a percentage basis. In other words, there's tons of more people right now that are being tested. So you're going to see much more people infected. So of course, the death rate as a number is going to go up. But if you're looking at the percentage of infected that die from this, it's down considerably across the board because we know so much more about this. We're not allowed to say that. We have to scare the shit out of everybody. Don't go out. If you're protesting, you can go out. It's okay. You're not going to spread it. But close New York, close California. You need to close these places. Again, you can go out, protest as much as you want, but close these places. I guarantee you, I'm telling you, no matter who wins the election, the coronavirus is going to be gone probably by, you're going to see it December, January, February. You're going to see a lot of the numbers coming because everyone's going to be, okay, it's over with. Now it can really report the truth. But again, throwing facts, throwing stats. Yes, I have strong opinions about this, but this is based on information that I'm getting all over the world. Thanks to you guys listening to this podcast. Connection, different businesses, different industries. Some are very wealthy. Some are millennials that send me fantastic information who know more about technology than anybody else and technology trends. And I have to tell you, before you stop listening to this podcast, if you haven't already, there are a lot of left-leaners out there who like to make money in stocks and say, Frank, stick to stocks. I don't want to. Listen, this matters. I know there's people out there hate facts. They don't care. They have an agenda that I'm not going to change it. It's fine. And I don't care what your politics are. I'm just telling you this because this is what's happening. And if you're right, left, middle, whatever race, forget everything I just said. Forget everything I just said. I don't care. The bottom line is most people are still scared to death of getting COVID. And masks, which are relevant, and most people across the country wear masks, it's going to be a reminder to everyone that that exists. I mean, it's a fresh reminder when you see a mask, when you go into, I can't tell you how many stores wear masks every time I go into a store, but sometimes I just run out of the car to go in and to the store real quick. I'm like, oh, I got to just go back to the car and grab a mask. It's a constant reminder like, holy shit, I can get the coronavirus. And couple all this with the fact that we won't have a vaccine this year and probably not into mid-2021 at the earliest, and our economy has zero chance of recovering this year. Now, when it comes to your portfolio, which is what I care about, I could tell you, the markets are not pricing this in. They're not pricing in the biggest states like New York, California closed for a few more months. No real revenue from sports. Hollywood still shut down. Disney parks under 40% capacity well into 2021. The travel industry operating below 25% capacity into 2021. This was not on the table. And cruises still think that they pushed it out to the end of October now. Well, we're not going to shit talk. They're not going December, January, February. Their revenues are down 75, 80%. How much longer can they sustain this? So as an investor who cares about creating generational wealth so that your families can have a better life, you have to understand this fact. Coronavirus risk, it's going to be out there. People are not going to change. And you need to know what's going to happen next. Well, I could tell you, if our economy remains closed through the first quarter of 2021, and we still don't have a vaccine, which is very, very likely, we're going to see a lot more bankruptcies. Oil companies, commercial real estate, retailers with small online presence, restaurants, hotels, casinos, cruise lines. These guys are in huge trouble. And how can they survive with sales down 75% plus for 12 to 18 months? Nobody models for that. The companies that are COVID plays that have run up incredibly from their March lows will likely do even better. Software companies, online stores, Shopify, Overstock, Etsy. I love Overstock. I mean, they were dying to sell that business, right, to fund T0. And nobody wanted it. I bet you a lot of people want to buy it today. The Zooms, if you're looking at cloud companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, do-it-yourself, Home Stocks, Home Depots, Lowe's, but even going more into Sherwin-Williams, Masco, Whirlpool, Owens Corning. I mean, the Walmarts, the Best Buys, exercise equipment companies. Those are ones that let you work out at Peloton, Nautilus. The biotech names with exposure to vaccines. Yes, we've seen these things move up a ton, but we're more desperate right now for a vaccine, right now than any other time since this virus has started. Most of us look, herd immunity. Florida's doing right. I mean, New York's not even open yet, New York City. You got to go through the process. We don't have a vaccine. What are you going to do? Keep it closed for 2 years? You got to open it back up. When you do, you're going to see more cases, but be smarter. I think you know now that if you do see people with coronavirus cases, just do me a favor. Don't put them in nursing homes. Probably a good idea. Again, who cares whose fault it is? But I think we could all agree on that. Don't do that this time. And please protect people over 60 with respiratory problems. That target area that the whole world knows about, but yet we're shutting down the economy for everyone under 60, even though we know it's the rates of you contracting COVID and dying are less than the flu. Now, based on traditional metrics, we normally see the markets fall sharply if the economy was surprisingly going to be shut down for an extra 6 months than originally predicted, right? And that's coming as a surprise. Again, I look at the numbers, I look at the analysts, I listen to the surveys taken by sell-side analysts. My job is to read all this stuff and understand it. That's why I watch Fox, I watch CNN. I need to know the consensus, because if I could prove the consensus wrong, that's how I make money for you and me, right? And it's not priced in that this is going to take another 6 to 9 months. So using traditional metrics, how the markets work, I would say we could see a return to the March lows for stocks. But we're not normal times. With the Fed, which they said will do anything it takes to stimulate this economy. This will include yield curve measures, keep rates super low, actually taking stakes in companies, expect that to happen, and they'll probably take warrants. That would definitely be in the money when you have the Fed backstopping these industries in 3 to 4 or 5 years, just like we saw at Fannie and Freddie. What did it take? 2 years before those things started generating money? They still under conservatorship. The government doesn't know what to do, but they're collecting billions, right? Because you just put every single freaking house under that, a home loan under that umbrella, and the housing market took off, and now the government's making a ton of money. Didn't take long when you have a printing press capable of printing $50 trillion backing it, that eventually it's going to backstop it and push these markets higher. But the Fed, you think it's been crazy? They're going to go nuts. They're going to go they have to spend at least another $6 trillion to support this economy. At least $6 trillion. If we don't see the coronavirus risk slow this year, which we won't. We definitely won't. It's election year. It's not going to stop. We're not going to see it. That's going to mean 60% or account for 60% of the economy that they're going to spend to put a floor under it. That's another $6 trillion. That's coming. That's definitely coming. I mean, even if it's 2 or 3 trillion, I can't believe you just said even if it's 2 or 3 trillion, right? I mean, think about that. It was $480 billion for TARP to bail out the whole entire financial world. And I'm like, hey, even if it's just 2 or 3 trillion, that's the world we're in right now. It's crazy, right? What does it mean for you as an investor? Gold, silver continue to soar. You with the recent rise, and you're seeing a lot, the commodity prices are rising along with the surge in gold and silver stocks. This sector is still significantly underowned. Another asset's going to soar new highs is Bitcoin. We're seeing that now. It's 11,000, a little below that. It's more than double from its March lows of 5,000. I know there's a lot of emotions here. I know some of you are pissed and some of you are going to be like, Frank, thanks, I agree with you. Forget all the bullshit. The politicians do not give a shit about you. We're putting people in power who are idiots, who are complete idiots. And it's amazing. They're getting paid, right? They're making all the decisions on everybody else who gets paid or we get more money. They're not in a position you and me are in. They don't care. They care about getting elected. That's it. That's all they care about is getting elected and having more power. What do you care about? Generational wealth, your families making money. So instead of looking at social media, getting pissed at the posts that don't support your beliefs, instead of holding up signs outside a courthouse to protest someone else's cause, you think you're protesting a cause. You're really not. It's someone else's cause. Instead of getting pissed at the rich while the assets inflate due to Fed policy, you need to focus how you can get rich from everything going on right now. Economy's going to be closed through this year. It's not priced into stocks and into 2020. The only way to stop this market from crashing is more government spending. The Fed is going to go nuts. Central banks around the world are going to go nuts. You haven't seen anything yet. There are clear winners and losers that I told you about already. Which group do you want to be a part of? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Emotions are probably running high, and I get it from both sides. But the bottom line, you can listen to the stats, whatever. You don't have to worry about dying from COVID. It's all bullshit. It really is. It's all bullshit. But that bullshit is going to continue. And what kind of investor do you want to be? You want to be someone that's like, oh, you're going to complain about social media? Or do you want to make money off of this trend? If you do, I just gave you a whole bunch of ways to do it because the Fed is going to go nuts. They need to go nuts to support this economy. I look at the numbers. I look at these service corporations. Nobody has COVID going through December. And we're not going to get a vaccine by then. If we do, I'd be surprised if anybody takes it because it's not going to have the safety, efficacy that we need, that information that we need before taking something like that. So be very careful here. There's ways to make money in this market. And if you can, my job is to see what's going on out there and report to you what I'm hearing and seeing, regardless of what side of the aisle it is or whatever. But just understand, this is about you. Care about yourself. Care about making money. Because there's ways that you can get incredibly rich right now. Things are happening that never happened in the history of the world, and you could be part of it if you're positioned right.